make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try another thing.
Is
So,
that is that what's considered the tempo where how it sounded different? Like how that one was like dun 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 dun, and now the other ones like didn't go smoothly. Like
I think tempo is
The-
how fast it was going.
how fast the beats are occurring is the tempo. And
that's
so,
what I mean. Like how that one was like kind of like evenly spaced every time, and it seemed like the other ones were like
it might have been harder to hear where the tempo was than some of the
Oh,
other
okay.
ones, but I think because the chords don't line up with the melody, they're so distant. But the tempo is actually the same, and the beat is actually the same.
oh okay.
Yeah. I want to try another thing. This is stuff that's not in your listing examples. This is just some stuff I pulled together. I just want to do a little comparison and contrast. So I want to listen just to a little bit of a beginning of two different movements. This is from a piece called Brandenburg Concerto Number 2. It's by J.S. Bach, one of the composers, Johann Sebastian Bach, that you guys have done some research on or some looking up of. And so this is I want to play the second movement, and then I'm going to play just a bit of the first movement. And let's compare and contrast. Do they sound more or less dissonant in comparison to each other? I mean, in other words, one is consonant, one is dissonant, or one is more consonant than the other, using consonance and dissonance to try to really hone in that concept of how the notes fit together in the harmonies to create that effect of consonance or dissonance overall. Let's try to get this louder. I'm not sure what the deal is going on here. See if that's any louder. Okay, so we don't really, it's hard to give that some kind of objective degree of consonance or dissonance, but it's what we want to try to do is compare it to something else. So let's compare it to this. This is a wholly different kind of musical kind of context, but you're trying to really focus in on that sense of harmony and consonance or dissonance. Okay, let's listen to the first one, a little bit of the first one again. And then a little bit of the other one. If you gun to your head, test question, you got to say one is more dissonant than the other, or one is more consonant than the other. How would you go about describing that?
That one's more consonant. The
You,
last
you
one
think the
just
second
say
one's more consonant than the first
fast-
one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The faster tempo one's more consonant. Than
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Let's. So here's two movements by composer Igor Stravinsky. I think he's on your list.
Yeah.
Is a composer to know about. This is a piece with a violin solo, although you might not recognize that immediately. And the violin soloist is Itzhak Perlman, who you have some examples of in Unit 3 of him playing some violin concerto music, just kind of tie things together with different people you'll come across in some of the different units. So these are two movements of the same piece. Again, let's do the same contrast: dissonance versus consonance. Okay, let's play some of the second one. Okay, let me do it again. This is the first. And here's the second. What do you think? Which one's more consonant in your ear?
I think the second one.
The second one.
Okay, I think so too. Now, the timbre on that one, that uses some string instruments and an orchestra like the first one. The timbre is actually kind of harsh and strained. It's high in the register, but that's not the same thing as harmony. Okay?
Yeah.
That's a hard distinction to make the difference between timbre and harmony. Harmony are how the notes fit together, and timbre is the unique quality of sound of the instrument or the instruments together. Yeah, it's a distinct difference. Here's another example. Tell me if this one is more consonant. Let's do this. Here's the first example of the prayer we just listened to by Stravinsky. Okay, here's another. This is a string quartet by Ruth Crawford Seeger, who's a well-known 20th century American composer. Is this more consonant or dissonant compared to the previous one we just listened to? What do you think?
I think it sounds less.
Less consonant, more dissonant. Either way of describing it. Does that make sense to your ear? All right. So you guys are sort of getting this. We just do one more. This is.
Can you repeat what you said? You said harmony is how the notes sound together, and what was the other term?
The
Timbre.
timbre is timbre, Timbre. It's a French word for color, and it refers to the unique sound of the instrument. It has nothing to do with what pitch it's playing, but that quality of sound it's making. One of the examples I would use is if you know how a piano sounds and how an organ sounds. They have very different timbres. They can play exactly the same harmonies,
But they'll
exact
sound
same melodies, but
very
the
different.
sounds are very different. You can identify the instrument by the quality of sound that it has. Clarinet is different than a flute, as you've heard from examples as you studied in class. A harpsichord is a keyboard instrument like a piano, but they sound very different. Yeah. So okay, this is beginning of a piece called "Taking a Chance on Love." It's a tune from. It's a jazz piece, and it's a band led by Benny Goodman back from the 1930s, late 30s, late 1930s. Okay, and this is a piece called Blues Connotations by Chick Corea and Bobby McFerrin, a pianist, well-known jazz pianist, and Bobby McFerrin's a well-known jazz boy and kind of popular singer from the late 20th century. you think? Some more consonant than the other?
The first one's more consonant than the second to me.
Yeah. I thought the second one was more consonant, but
Okay.
his voice kind of threw me off a little. So
Yeah,
that's
the
where I had to
timbres are
convince-
so different between them. That's a tough one because it's sort of like timbre kind of, they're so different. The other ones, the timbres are similar between the examples, and the differences in timbre make it a little harder, I think, on that one. I think you could kind of toss it either way. It would really depend on what segments of the piece probably I played for you. So that's a little tougher one. I wanted to throw one in there that threw a wrench in the
So I
works.
swear I've heard that first one before somewhere.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah. Taking it's you can almost the clarinet's playing. You know, you can almost hear the word "taking a chance." It's a jazz standard. All right.